I'm back for the second video in my catch-up wrap-up series. If you didn't see yesterday, I posted the video of all of the SFF books that I've read in the last 3 months. Today's video is going to be all of the romance books I read in the last 3 months, and there are still 2 more in the series that are coming tomorrow and the day after, and those will be my contemporary and nonfiction and my childhood rereads videos. I've not wrapped up anything since June, so I thought it would be easier to break things up into genres as I try and go through all of the books I read in 3 months, which was a lot and way too much. So today's video is going to be all of the romance that I read in the last couple months. I'll be breaking this video up by author because I mainly read from 3 authors plus 1 short story collection. The first author that I read an entire series from is Alyssa Cole. I read her entire Reluctant Royal series and I loved it. These books get so much hype on BookTube, and for very good reason. They're really good books. The first one is A Princess in Theory, which is about Naledi, who is a graduate student studying biology, and she keeps getting these really weird emails saying that she is the long-lost fiancé of an African prince. Obviously, she doesn't believe that, and when that African prince comes to the US to find her, things get very interesting. This was my first full-length novel from Alyssa Cole, and I really loved it, especially because there's so much science in it. I am actually a biologist myself, so I knew exactly what was being referenced the whole time, and that was really entertaining, especially considering I never really see main characters in STEM. If we get students in any kind of books, it's normally a humanities student, because obviously that's what authors can relate to the most and have the most experience in, but I really enjoyed the representation we got for women in STEM especially, and some of the challenges that come up for us. It was so refreshing to see. In addition to the romance just being adorable, I really enjoyed these characters. I love their personalities. Naledi is so logic focused, and obviously I could relate to her, even though she did get a little bit overboard with the science references sometimes. Like, it was coming up in her daily thought processes in a really weird way, at least in my personal experience. I don't think about like DNA on a daily basis, even if I work with it in the lab every day. So while I appreciate the constant reminder that she's in science and the representation that brings, it was a little bit cheesy just because I know exactly what it's like to be in that situation and I'm not having these random science thought processes. The Prince Thabiso is very sweet and very understandable in his reactions. I really liked the character interactions between these two, and I liked seeing how their relationship progressed from this like flirty banter when she didn't really know who he was to being confused about her past and what was happening, and then eventually just falling in love with him. It was so cute. The pacing was perfect. It was never slow, and yet you still had enough time to get to know these characters and really feel for them. And I just really enjoyed the story, and it was masterfully written. I definitely recommend it to everyone, and I obviously continued on in the series and finished the whole series. But the second book in this series is A Duke by Default. This one follows Naledi's friend Portia as she goes to Scotland to take an apprenticeship with a swordsmaker. Portia has a lot of struggles with her self-worth, especially with her parents not really recognizing her successes compared to her twin sister, who is very traditionally successful running her own business. And so she's always running away from her problems and feeling like a failure. The love interest is obviously the swordsmaker that she works under, and he's your classic gruff Scotsman who is actually just super sweet inside, and I thought it was very adorable. I liked this book a bit more just because of all of the internal struggles that Portia goes through. I thought it was a really good depiction of mental health and battling with your self-esteem. There was ADHD representation. And while the love interest is pretty tropey, Portia is just such a strong character that I didn't really mind. Plus, it helps that I just love a Scottish setting, which I've come to realize. The pacing in this was a little bit off, I think because it was balancing an external plot on one hand and then processing the internal struggles of Portia on the other. So it was a little bit more obvious when things weren't really happening in the external plot because you were spending so much time in Portia's thoughts that it made the pacing of the story just feel a little bit weird. But I really appreciated how deeply it went into Portia's character and her development, and my love for the Scottish setting just made this book fantastic for me. I really, really enjoyed it. It's another highly recommend for me. Obviously, actually, this whole series, I just highly recommend. Alyssa Cole is fantastic, and the series is just so much fun. I continued in the series with the novella Once Ghosted, Twice Shy, and this one follows Prince Thabiso's secretary, who in the first book you knew was having some sort of relationship while Prince Thabiso was in New York, like stalking Naledi, but something happened where it didn't quite work out, and this novella is her going back to New York and kind of working through her feelings and running into that love again. This one was my least favorite story in the series, which is really unfortunate because it is the FF romance, and while I loved the descriptions of the women, they were fantastic, everything else just didn't really come together for me. I really didn't like the main couple. The sort of on-off second chance thing was just not working for me at all. And I think part of that is because a lot of the issue with this relationship was just miscommunication and people not talking to each other, which just gets on my nerves. And I also didn't fully understand why these two characters even liked each other. It wasn't really explained in a believable way, which also could just be because it's a novella. It's a very short time period, so you don't get to see their development that much. You don't get to see it really at all. So it made it a little bit harder for me to get into the couple itself because I didn't see any build up to it. I didn't see any reason for them to have these kinds of feelings towards each other. I was told that they did, but I never saw it myself. And that's especially disappointing because I love the Secretary Lakotsi. She is such an interesting character and I really enjoy seeing her in the other books, but when she's given her own novella, it just didn't live up to what I wanted, and I was so sad. So unfortunately, this was not a great novella for me, but the next novella I absolutely loved again. It's Can't Escape Love, and it's so cute. This one drew me right in. This one follows Regina, who is Portia's twin sister, the super successful one, and it's adorable. She runs a nerdy website, which is her just thriving business, but she is having trouble falling asleep at night. And the one thing she's found to help her fall asleep is a certain streamer's voice. Unfortunately, that streamer has deleted all of their videos and is not streaming anymore, so she sends him an email to ask for a recording of his voice so that she can fall asleep at night. And things kind of develop from there, and it's just so cute. I love when technology plays a role in a romance. It makes it so relatable, and despite us having technology for a very long time now, I haven't read that many romances that really take advantage of it the way that this one did. While I wasn't nearly nerdy enough to understand all of the references in this, I still loved it so much. The nerdy romance just swept me off my feet. While I think the love interest could have used a little bit more character development, I can't really fault it too much considering, again, it's a novella. It's a very short time period for you to get a story through, and the characterization we got from him was just super sweet. He is the most understanding, adorable guy, and I loved him so much. I love their interaction. There's so much sincerity between the two of them that was just so beautiful to see. Regina's also in a wheelchair, and the love interest is neurodiverse. I think he was on the autism spectrum, but I'm not sure. So seeing that kind of representation was also so refreshing. But honestly, I just can't get over how cute this love story is. It's so adorable, and I enjoyed it so much. It made me smile so hard. I actually read this at the end of my reading vlog for City of Brass, and you could see my reaction. I was just like overflowing with happiness. So obviously that was a really great novella for me. I loved it, and I continued on to the next full-length novel in the series, and that was A Prince on Paper, which follows Naya as she tries to escape the shadow of her father's crimes. Naya loves otome games or virtual dating games, and she just wants to find her prince in real life. She just wasn't expecting to find him in a real-life prince that she already kind of hates. Hate to love with a nerdy girl and a rakish prince. Of course, I'm all in for this. It was so cute. As much as the rake with a heart of gold is an overdone trope, I still love it every time. Naledi is such a well fleshed out character. She's dealing with a lot of really heavy things, all of the effects of trauma based on things that have happened in previous books, while also trying to discover herself and see who she really is after being just so locked away for all of her life. There's also gender exploration and a lot of really heavy topics, but it's balanced so well with the humor. There's obviously hate to love and a fake engagement where feelings start to develop against both of their wills, and it's just so cute and so heartwarming. And I think it toes a delicate line of going into all of these deeper, darker issues while also still being a sweet and fluffy, funny romance. And I want to say that it was a lot of fun, and yet I know that it tackles a lot of darker things, so how it can go through all of those dark issues and still make it feel like a fun book overall is just fascinating. And that's the last of the Reluctant Royal series. There is going to be a spin-off series that I do plan to read. I think the first book comes out in December. I don't know if it's a series fully or if it's just one spin-off book. I'm not sure, but I'm gonna read it anyway because Alyssa Cole. Yes. Before I completely transition out of Alyssa Cole, I did read a short story collection that she was involved in. It's Hamilton's Battalion, and this was by Rose Lerner, Courtney Milan, and Alyssa Cole. I was very mixed on this short story collection. Basically, it's 3 different romances all centered around Alexander Hamilton and the people in his battalion. The overall kind of tie-together story is Hamilton's wife is going through his battalion and looking for any stories about her husband. And through that, we end up getting a bunch of other love stories from all of the people within his battalion. I was very, very mixed on this. I had the entire spectrum in these 3 stories. Basically, I ended up DNFing the first story. I absolutely loved the second story, which is not a surprise because it was Courtney Milan, and I was okay with the third story by Alyssa Cole. The first story, I was just really bored by the characters. It was like a failed marriage where the wife ran away and she ended up joining the battalion dressed as a man, and her husband comes up as a prisoner of her battalion and of her regiment, and it's them kind of working through their conflict and also being in this like Mulan situation. It was just not really my thing. I didn't care about these characters at all, and considering there's no real plot outside of the characters working through their conflict, it wasn't really great for me. I just found them very boring and very hard to relate to. So even though it was a short story, I DNF'd it and I just moved on to the next one. The next one was by Courtney Milan and I loved it so much. This one is a male-male romance between a black soldier and a British soldier, and it's adorable. It's so sweet. I love the character interactions. Courtney Milan does characters so well and character dynamics so well. Their banter was just spot on. The American soldier is kind of quiet and gruff, and the British soldier is such an extrovert, such a ball of sunshine. And it's these 2 kind of opposing personalities interacting and falling in love, and it's so cute. I really, really enjoyed it. The third one by Alyssa Cole was a female-female romance, which I think she did better with this romance than she did with Once Ghosted, Twice Shy. I could understand the relationship dynamic much more in this one, even though I still couldn't really connect to the characters. I don't think that was a fault of the writing. I think it was just something about how the characters were structured and their personalities that didn't quite mesh with me, but I still enjoyed this romance more than I did that novella, which makes almost no sense because I love Licozzi, and I loved Licozzi to start with, so I don't know, but I personally liked this one better than that novella. This one follows the sort of secretary servant of Mrs. Hamilton who ends up falling in love with one of the women who comes to tell Mrs. Hamilton a story of her husband. She's been burned by love before, so she's very closed off emotionally, and it's about her kind of working through that and falling in love again. It was cute and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't my favorite, and I've honestly forgotten a lot of it at this point. I read it probably 3 months ago now. There are obviously other stories from Alyssa Cole that I liked better, but it was good and enjoyable. This short story collection as a whole was just kind of really up and down for me, so I don't know if I would really recommend it. I think I would just recommend these authors in general. Courtney Milan and Alyssa Cole are fantastic and you should check out their work for sure. Next, I read a couple of historical romances by Sherry Thomas. The first one was a novella called Claiming the Duchess. This is technically a prequel to one of her series that I was interested in starting, so I decided to pick up the novella first because it was a prequel novella. This is about a woman who's in a loveless marriage with a duke, and she starts a correspondence with a pen pal. A couple years later, when the duke passes away, she discovers her pen pal is not quite who she thought it was. I did not really like this very much. It was far too short for anything of substance, really. The characters felt so flat. The main character was basically lifeless. She had no personality. And the love interest wasn't really that appealing either. While I like the concept, it's cute, the execution was pretty flat. There's not really enough time for you to either get attached to the characters or buy into the relationship that's happening. And as a side note on relationships, there was a really, really odd mother-child relationship that was kind of like brother-sister, very protective younger brother, but sort of mother. It was really weird. None of it really made sense, and I just didn't really like it. I am planning to try the series, or the first book in the series at least, because it should be longer than this novella and should have more time to flesh out what it wants to, but this novella was not a good start for it. However, Duchess, which is the first book in the Marsden series, a different series, was a good start. I really enjoyed it. This one is full of drama and scandal as it follows an almost otherworldly cook as she interferes with the lives of these two brothers. While this is kind of messy, it's so entertaining, and the descriptions of food in here were, oh my god, incredible. Everything about it was sexy. The food was so, truly delicious. 100%. It's a romance book and I'm focused on the food descriptions. Yeah, you can see where my head is. But really, it was a lot of fun and truly captivating. I was immediately sucked into these characters and trying to work through their conflicts and figure out how everything would work out in the end. I was immediately pulled into the drama, which is not something I would have expected. I'm normally not someone who's super into like extra dramatic stories, and this one doesn't really go that far, so I think it was at a good level for me actually. I thought all of the character dynamics were really fascinating, the main ones being between a servant and a master and a mother and a son. There is potential for some power imbalance issues, but it never really felt like it was an imbalance of power, partially because the two had met before the master even knew who the woman was. So it never truly felt like there was an imbalance of power because they knew each other before their working arrangement. And even then, there's a whole issue with like knowing people's identities in this story that made it very interesting as well. There's a lot to this story plot-wise, and every bit of it is just like candy. You don't want to stop. There were some reactions from some of the characters that felt a little bit overboard and not really believable, but I mean, that's my only real complaint about the book. I just had such a fun time with this and I really loved it. So I went on to the second book, which is Not Quite the Husband. And this is sort of tangentially related to the first book, but in a really complicated way that I'm not going to go into because honestly, that first book has so many things happening in it. But this one I just really did not like. It's a failed marriage between a woman who is medically trained and a husband who is a mathematical professor. The woman has basically run away from all of her problems in England and has been traveling around the world. She's currently in India when her ex-husband finds her there to bring her back. There was nothing really about this that I enjoyed. I thought the relationship was very dumb. Again, a lot of it is miscommunication and people just not talking to each other, which was annoying. And as smart as these two people are supposed to be, they're pretty dumb. Their reasoning and justification for what they did in the past, while maybe reasonable, just was really frustrating to read about. And I didn't understand why either of these characters liked each other. I did not get the chemistry there at all. And add in that there was a revolution and a war that they got stuck in the middle of while they were trying to get back to England from India. I just was not interested at all. There are so many long descriptions of land and places that I know nothing about and I didn't care about because the author didn't make me care about them. It was just text on text of what this land looked like, what was desert, where the mountains were, where there was a river and trees, and it's like, okay, fine, but like, what does that have to do with anything? I guess it was supposed to tie into the sort of revolution plot, but I just couldn't get myself to care. The descriptions were so long and so detailed, and it was just endless talk about land and traveling, and I didn't care at all. And then everything that happened with the war was just cliche, and because I didn't care about these characters at all, I didn't care. I just didn't care. So I didn't like the plot, I didn't like the characters, I didn't like the romance. Was there anything I did like? No, not really. There was a lot of really weird things about consent in here too. Throwing that out there. There was a lot of dubious consent that was not comfortable either. So there's that too. not a great book. So Sherry Thomas has been a little bit hit and miss for me. I didn't like 2 of her romances at all. I loved one of her romances, and I really enjoyed her fantasy, which was The Magnolia Sword. I talked about it in my video yesterday, so you can check my thoughts there. But I'm still going to continue with her. I am still interested in a few of her series, so I plan to give her more of a try and just see how I feel about her overall. And the last romance book I read has been very hyped on BookTube, and that's Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. This follows a woman who feels like her chronic pain has been holding her back, and she wants to start living life to the fullest. She enlists the help of her landlord to try and achieve some of her goals. This one is just as adorable as everyone says it is. The love interest is so sweet. He is so soft and pure. He's very thoughtful and observant and truly cares about her well-being. And Chloe is a very strong and independent character. She doesn't like relying on others because of her chronic pain, and it's really fun seeing these 2 characters interact and break down each other's walls. It's so sweet. While there is a minor plot, the main focus is on developing these characters, and I loved spending every minute with them. I thought the romance was very adorable. There's no dumb miscommunication. There's like one slight thing, but it gets resolved so fast that it's so refreshing to see, especially because I've complained about miscommunication a couple times in this video alone. So it's a very prevalent trope that I just don't like. And I like how it subverted that in this book. It was so fantastic. And I really enjoyed the slight change in setting for me. It's still a contemporary romance, but it's set in the UK instead of the US. So that was just foreign enough for me to be really interesting to read about and keep me that much more engaged. And overall, this is just such a sweet book with an adorable romance. I've heard other people describe Talia Hibbert's love interests as being very emotionally aware, and I can definitely see that in this book, and I really appreciate it. After all of these different versions of gruff and standoffish and like not really caring about the main character that are even in some romances that I'm picking up, it's very nice to see someone who's actually like in tune with themselves and understands themselves. I don't claim to be very well versed in the romance genre. I just started reading romance this summer, so I can't really speak to the overall prevalence of tropes, but from my very, very limited sample size of what I've seen, this was a breath of fresh air. I will be reading the next book in this series. From what I've heard, a lot of people have liked it even better than the first book, but they said to give it a little bit of time because it follows a lot of the same plot beats as this book did. So I will be taking their advice, and if you have any other recommendations for me, again, I am very new to romance, so please give me recommendations for really good ones. I want to enjoy this genre more. I want to explore it more. So please let me know. Otherwise, those are all of the romance books that I've read in the last 3 months. I still have 2 more videos in this catch-up wrap-up series coming. Tomorrow will be contemporaries and nonfiction, so keep an eye out if you're interested in that. And otherwise, I will see you later. Bye.